Welcome to a deep dive into a material that's, well, it's been an unsung hero of our infrastructure, really. But it's one with a deeply troubling kind of dark side for public health. We're talking about asbestos. And there's fresh news that its long-awaited ban here in the U.S. might actually be reconsidered. It's a truly complex situation.
It absolutely is. This issue, it weaves together layers of history, cutting-edge science, shifting policy, and some incredibly personal, often heartbreaking stories.
Yeah.
Today, our mission is really to unpack what asbestos is, why it's considered so dangerous, trace the decades-long journey to its recent ban.
Right.
And then dive into the very different perspectives on these latest developments.
We've pulled together insights from a recent Newsweek article, interviews with leading experts, and official court documents. We want to give you a really clear understanding of what's at stake for all of us.
Yeah, cut through the noise.
Exactly. Our goal here is to really help you understand the core arguments and see what the real implications could be. So let's begin by breaking down the fundamentals. Before we get into these recent policy shifts, let's just make sure we're all on the same page about what asbestos actually is and why it remains such a hot-button issue in public health.
Right. So asbestos is a naturally occurring mineral. Historically, it was prized for its incredible properties.
Like what, specifically?
We're talking about its strength, its ability to resist fire, its insulation capabilities, even sound absorption. Oh. Because of these qualities, it was, incredibly widespread. Building, construction.
Everywhere, basically.
Pretty much. However, since around the year 2000, extensive research has unequivocally clarified its significant health risks. It's now definitively classified by various U.S. departments as a known human carcinogen.
A carcinogen, meaning it causes cancer.
Correct. A substance known to cause cancer.
And when you say significant health risks, the numbers are truly stark, aren't they?
They are. The danger is substantial. According to the EPA under the Biden administration, exposure to asbestos is linked to more than 40,000 deaths in the U.S. each year.
8,000, wow.
And the truly alarming aspect here is how quickly this material can affect individuals. Dr. Arthur L. Frank, he's a professor of public health and medicine at Drexel University. He highlights the severity, stating that, and this is a direct quote, as little as 1 day of exposure can give some individuals cancer.
1 day.
1 day. The profound insight here is just the utterly unpredictable and insidious nature of asbestos. Even minimal fleeting contact can potentially initiate a fatal disease decades later.
Decades.
Yeah, which makes safe handling almost a contradiction in terms for many public health experts.
That statistic about 1 day of exposure really sticks with you. It fundamentally changes how you might perceive the risk, doesn't it? It's not just long-term industrial exposure we're talking about then.
Absolutely. It highlights that the danger isn't just cumulative, it can be acute and insidious, which, makes a comprehensive ban all the more critical in the eyes of public health advocates.
Okay. So understanding the current situation, this potential reconsideration, it requires a good look back. Right?
Yeah.
At the decades-long battle to ban asbestos in the U.S., this certainly isn't a new fight.
That's right. The U.S. has a complicated history with asbestos regulation. There was a significant attempt to ban it back in 1989 by the EPA.
Right, I remember hearing about that.
But that effort was ultimately blocked in court. So the most recent and highly anticipated significant step was just earlier this year, 2024. That's when the Biden administration finalized its own ban on chrysotile asbestos.
Chrysotile, that's also known as white asbestos.
Exactly, white asbestos. And this ban was particularly impactful because chrysotile was the last type of asbestos still used in or imported into the country.
The last one, okay.
At the time, EPA Administrator Michael Regan was very clear. He stated, "The science is clear. Asbestos is a known carcinogen that has severe impacts on public health." Pretty unambiguous.
And if we kind of zoom out a bit, where does the U.S. stand in the global picture on this? Are other countries using it?
Well, that's a key point. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's really important to note the global context. Chrysotile asbestos is already banned in 50 countries worldwide.
50.
50, and that includes all developed countries. So the U.S. has been a bit of an outlier in this regard for a while.
Okay, so the ban was finally cemented earlier this year, but now we're hearing about a potential reconsideration. This feels like a big deal.
It is.
What exactly is the Trump administration proposing here? And what's the practical implication of that 30-month reevaluation period and the request for a 6-month suspension? Does that effectively put the ban on hold?
That's a great question, and it gets right to the heart of the current uncertainty. The Trump administration is indeed moving to reconsider this recently finalized ban.
Reconsider. Okay.
According to court documents, these were filed with the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. The EPA has stated that the process of reevaluating the ban would take approximately 30 months.
30 months. 2.5 years.
Right. And they've also asked the court to extend the suspension of the law for 6 months with the possibility of additional extension requests later.
So practically, yeah, this could mean the ban is effectively on hold for some time,
Yeah.
creating this period of regulatory limbo.
That's a very real possibility, yes. It creates uncertainty for industries, for public health officials, for everyone involved.
This also raises an important question about their underlying regulatory philosophy, doesn't it?
Right.
I mean, what's the driving force behind this reconsideration? Why now?
It does seem to signal a shift. The Office of Chemical Safety and Pollution Prevention, which is a division within the EPA, they're tasked with investigating whether the Toxic Substances Control Act, that's TSCA, the main federal law for chemical safety, whether it went beyond what is necessary to eliminate the unreasonable risk.
Beyond what is necessary.
Exactly. And whether alternative measures like requiring permanent workplace protection measures could eliminate the risk instead of a full ban.
So moving from ban it completely to maybe we can manage it.
That appears to be the direction of the inquiry, yes. Exploring other control methods short of a ban.
And it's not just the current administration's actions, right? This discussion also brings to light some very striking past statements from Donald Trump himself about asbestos.
Indeed. That often comes up in this debate.
What were those views? How have these sort of colored the perception of this issue?
Well, back in his 1997 book, The Art of the Comeback, Donald Trump famously claimed that asbestos is, and I quote, 100% safe once applied.
Wow. 100% safe.
Yes. He also stated his belief back then that the movement against asbestos was led by the mob.
The mob, okay.
Uh-huh. This perspective gained, international attention again in 2018. There were reports that Asbestos, one of the world's largest producers and sellers of asbestos, reportedly put Trump's face and the words, "Approved by Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States," on some of its products.
Seriously, on the asbestos products?
That was widely reported at the time, yes. It definitely adds another layer, a political dimension to this long-standing issue.
Okay. So this reconsideration has, maybe predictably, ignited a really fierce debate. You've got health advocates, scientists, industry folks. Let's delve into the different viewpoints presented in our sources, because they really couldn't be more different.
Absolutely. On one side, you have very strong warnings from health experts from organizations, Linda Reinstein, for example.
You mentioned her earlier, co-founder of the Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization.
That's right. And her husband, Alan, tragically died from mesothelioma, which is that rare aggressive cancer directly linked to asbestos exposure.
Right.
She called the reconsideration deeply concerning and outrageous. It's deadly. Very strong words.
Understandably.
She emphasizes that the 2024 rule only banned one fiber crystal in 6 specific conditions of use.
Only 6. So it wasn't even a total ban on chrysotile.
Not across the board, no. It targeted specific uses, like certain industrial applications, particularly for chlorine and caustic soda manufacturing. Her concern is that litigation and political pressure could reverse core parts of the rule, including those specific protections.
I see.
She stresses, quite emphatically, there is no safe level of asbestos exposure. Full stop. And she advocates for federal legislation, like the bipartisan 2025 Alan Reinstein Ban Asbestos Now Act, or ARBAN Act.
Okay, ARBAN.
The goal there is to ensure a truly comprehensive ban and, importantly, prevent future rollbacks like the one being discussed now.
And others echo this.
Oh, yes. Senator Jeff Merkley, an Oregon Democrat, called it a polluters over people agenda that undermines public health safeguards. Dr. Arthur L. Frank, who we mentioned earlier.
Oh, Drexel, right.
Yes. He reiterated that delaying this ban will lead to unnecessary disease and death for some Americans going forward. He also noted again that the U.S. still hasn't joined over 70 countries, including all developed ones, in a total ban on all forms of asbestos.
Still lagging behind.
And he warned that even though raw asbestos imports are low right now, products containing it, things like friction materials, roofing materials, they can still be bought and used. And new cases of disease will keep appearing for 50 years because of that incredibly long latency period.
50 years. It's staggering. That's a powerful case for a complete and immediate ban. But what about the other side? We heard earlier that some argue it can be handled safely. How do scientists reconcile these seemingly opposing viewpoints? Safe handling versus zero tolerance.
That really is the crux of the debate, isn't it? And there is indeed another perspective. Dennis Postenbach, he's a chief scientist of toxicology and risk exposure for TRC companies.
Okay.
He told Newsweek that, in his view, crystal asbestos does not pose the magnitude of risk as the amphibole asbestos. Amphibole is a different type, generally considered more hazardous.
So he's differentiating between types of asbestos.
Yes, and he believes, quote, most scientists believe there is no reason why it can't be handled safely, as we handle hundreds of different hazardous chemicals. So a ban is not necessary.
Handle it like other chemicals.
That's his argument. Postenbach also noted that asbestos functionally hasn't really been used much for decades in the U.S., largely due to the risk of litigation.
Makes sense. Companies are afraid of lawsuits.
Exactly. And he suggested that if the government reverses the ban, the primary impact might actually be on litigation.
How so?
Because, he argues, it removes the sensationalism of lawyers claiming it was so toxic that it needed to be banned. It takes away that specific legal argument.
Interesting perspective on the legal angle.
While he thinks it's perfectly fine to lift the ban, he did add it would probably be preferable to allow the ban but permit certain users to ask for an exemption.
So allow the ban generally, but create exceptions for specific uses.
That seems to be his preferred middle ground, yes. A sort of case-by-case approach rather than a blanket ban or a complete reversal.
So we've explored the history of asbestos use and regulation. We've delved into the science behind its dangers, which seems pretty clear on the risks. And we've heard the complex, often conflicting arguments surrounding this potential reconsideration of the ban.
Yeah.
You've heard perspectives ranging from, grave warnings about lives at risk
Absolutely.
to arguments about safe handling and the maybe unexpected impact on litigation. It's truly a microcosm of broader policy debates, isn't it?
It really is. This whole discussion highlights the ongoing tension between, well, historical use, the scientific consensus on significant health risks, economic considerations, and just different regulatory approaches. How do you balance all that?
Right.
It's a vivid example of how public health policy is constantly being debated, shaped, and reshaped, often with really profound consequences for people's lives.
As you reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider this.
Yeah.
Given that incredibly long latency period for asbestos-related diseases, the fact that they can appear decades after exposure.
Yeah, decades later.
What level of responsibility should society take for materials used in the past? And how should that responsibility, whatever we decide it is, inform policy decisions about their future use or restriction?
That's a heavy question.
It is. It's a profound question, really, that resonates far beyond just this single issue of asbestos. Something to think about.